Hello, and welcome to We Live for Saturday, your favorite college football podcast. I'm your co-host, Mike, and with me, as always, is your other co-host, John. John, how you doing this evening?
I'm doing good. It was a nice day today, man. You know, a little overcast, but the weather's been fantastic. So I was able to get outside, get a little work done. Just working and looking forward to spring and, got a lot of work to do in the yard. But other than that, man, nothing major. Things are all just kind of the way they should be at this point in
I
time.
like the overcast days at this point. I don't need it to
Mhm.
be sunny. We're going to get enough sun in the summer.
True.
Feel like we get enough of that, and I walk around with my sunglasses on for 3 months straight, and that gets old after a while too.
Yeah, that's
There's a
true.
reason I don't live on the West Coast anymore. I didn't enjoy that aspect of it. I didn't like, oh, it's sunny in summer 10 months a year. Isn't that awesome? Everyone loves it. I'm like, no, actually, if it's 93 and sunny one more day, I think I'm going to take my hair and rip it out from by the roots. It's what I'm going to do. So no, like some people love that. I don't get it. I don't get the love of the heat like that. Like, here's the thing. At any other temperature, you can layer the right amount of clothes.
True.
You know, if even it's cold, you can wear enough to be fine.
Yep.
And if it's not cold, 9 months a year.
Mm-hmm.
And you can layer up the exact right amount for the time. But when it gets too hot, man, it doesn't matter what you're wearing, you are sweating.
Yep. True.
And like that gets old. I don't love the dog days of summer. It's not my jam.
I remember you calling me one time. I was living in New York and you were in LA, and you were telling me like that it was raining outside and you were going for a walk because it was the only time
I was so pumped.
Yeah.
Oh my God. When we got a cloudy day, I was like, ooh, it's a cloudy day. I'm going to conquer the world. And like, in retrospect, I probably just wasn't cut out to live somewhere with that much sunshine.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, we like the sunshine, but I
like the sunshine within
change.
Reason.
Yes.
It has its place. I don't need it all the time.
Yeah.
I don't need it to be the friend that never goes away, That's
same
why I
way.
don't understand why people are obsessed with Denver. They're like, Denver. I'm like, Denver has more sunny days than Los Angeles, man.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't get it. I don't like your skin. It's going to hurt it so bad. It's going to damage you. All right,
Yeah.
John. So we have some news to talk about this week. That's exciting.
Woo-woo.
So we're going to talk about news, and then we're going to get into, so we decided it's March Madness. Everyone's watching, all the basketball games. And I don't know, John, if you've seen much, but I watched a bunch this past weekend. It was great. Maryland won on a last-second shot. And because of that, Minnesota has a new basketball coach.
That's exciting. I mean,
because we weren't going to get him until he was done in the NCAA tournament.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this transfer portal opened up on Monday too. So like it was a big deal for Maryland to make that shot. So, hey, Terrapins, good work. Well done.
I heard it might've been a travel though. But...
Oh, it was definitely a travel. Are you kidding me? He took 3 steps as clearly as anyone's. He took like one really big step and then 2 quick ones. And I'm like, that still adds up to 3.
Yeah.
Is the thing. It's still 3.
Well, the refs knew that. They were like, you know what, Minnesota needs their coach. They had a feeling, and they were.
You think Mark Coyle got to them?
You
think Minnesota AD Mark Coyle got to them and was like, hey guys, you need to here's some under the table, like give him a nudge.
Yeah.
And it's so funny to watch like the whole establishment try to get behind the call, like the media establishment. They're like, I don't think it was enough to call the travel. And I even saw a guy like, in the NBA, they'd never call that. I was like, we're not in the NBA, man. This is college basketball. And in college, you don't get 3 steps.
Mm-hmm.
You get 2, 2.5, but you don't get 3.
Mm-hmm.
So like it was, but you know what? I was happy it happened.
Yep.
Because if they call a travel there, Maryland loses, and Colorado State and Minnesota doesn't have a coach. So that's cool. The Nico Medved era has started in basketball. That's exciting. So in honor of March Madness and all the big games we've seen, we are going to have our own March Madness 2025 tournament, only with 2025 Big Ten football teams.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the thing. We work hard to bring you the news, but we can only work so hard so much of the time. So it was going to be a real pain to figure out how to do an 18-team bracket. Like that's just an awkward amount of teams. So we decided, you know what? We are the podcast that covers all the schools, not just the helmet schools. So your number 1 and number 2 favored teams in the Big Ten, Ohio State and Oregon, you're out. You're out. You're not in this. So you were sitting back, having a pina colada, just watching the rest of the Big Ten lay waste to each other because you've been deemed. I think the idea would be at the end, right? Our winner of this bracket would take on Ohio State and Oregon for Big Ten supremacy.
Yeah.
That would be the way for it to go.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we removed. There's obviously Penn State and Michigan as also helmet schools here, but like it just felt like we wanted to kind of level the playing field a little bit, just to take those, because Oregon and Ohio State are on their own level at this point.
They've been recruiting at such a higher level than everybody else now for like a while. Yeah. Ohio State always has, and Oregon, now that Phil Knight gets more and more desperate, Oregon has joined Ohio State and that Georgia, Alabama, Texas. Really, it's just those 5 schools at this point. Yeah. For a long time, it was Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia. And then Texas kind of joined them when Sarkisian got there, and they got their ducks in a row a little bit. And then Oregon, and then there's a drop off to everybody else. And there are other people that have a lot of money, but they haven't turned out the talent, and they don't recruit quite as well because they haven't turned out the talent. Because they don't recruit as well, they don't turn out as much talent, et cetera, et cetera. So Texas A&M, yes, you have tons of money. Texas Tech, you have tons of money, reportedly. Yeah. But like until we see you do it on the field, we can't put you in those tiers.
Exactly.
Yep. So out of the Big Ten, I'd say it's 5 teams total in the nation. I'd say it's Ohio State and Oregon right now. So that just gives everybody else a better chance, though.
Yeah.
In this bracket. So, we'll get to that. But should we talk news first?
Let's talk news. But before we move on to that, as always, if you want to find We Live for Saturday, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Podcast Addict. You can find us on Twitter at We Live for B1GSat. You can find Mike at Alibaba26. And you can find me, John, at Norwegian Gopher. And you can email us, we live for Saturday, b1g@gmail.com. Please like and subscribe, follow, retweet, all that stuff. We would really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yes. And just to be totally transparent with everyone, like we love to do this for the love of the podcasting game. But if you can subscribe, we get enough watch hours. Plenty of people are watching the show. What we need is more subscribers. Yeah. And if we get enough subscribers, then we can monetize.
Yeah.
And then not only are we bringing you this awesome Big Ten news, but we're getting something out of it too. So, we're just going to be real with you. Like we're just like anybody else. We'd be happy to take our hobby and turn it into a hustle because that's America in 2025, right? You have to monetize your hobbies because we live in a capitalist dystopia. But we won't get into politics because this is a football show, baby. And we're happy here. Everything's great in the world of football.
Yep.
And we're going to have a good time talking ball.
Yep.
So, please subscribe. Go to YouTube. And if you're an audio-only listener, as always, please go to YouTube. You can go under any email address you have. Go to YouTube, We Live for Saturday, and subscribe. Appreciate it in advance. Please. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who's subscribed recently. We've gotten some new subscribers. So we appreciate you and, are excited to have you out there listening. All right. So, John, there's been a development in first of all, we'll have to talk about the Deion Sanders story. So these developments were via Athlon Sports, Steven Crowder and Emmanuel Walker. So Deion Sanders, head coach of the Colorado Buffaloes, quote, has always been an innovator on and off the field. Now he's doing it once again with the request to have a joint spring football practice with another team. Syracuse head coach, football coach Fran Brown is ready to bring his team to Boulder, and alongside Sanders is waiting for the NCAA to give the people what they want, close quote. So Deion Sanders wants to do a spring game against another team, or at least a practice. And I love that idea. If we're not going to have spring games anymore, but you can have a practice with 2 power conference teams against each other. I'd even sign up to watch Minnesota scrimmage like NDSU or something.
Yeah.
You know, I think something like that could be really fun, even if it's not. But like, it'd be even more fun to have power conference opponents.
Yeah.
And on top of that, now inspired by Deion, Mike Gundy, longtime head coach of Oklahoma State, is suggesting that they reignite Bedlam, the Oklahoma State football rivalry, as a spring game.
That'd be awesome.
That would be great, because it sucks we don't get Bedlam every year anymore because of, and like we don't get it anymore at all because of realignment. Like, that's really sad. It's long been one of my favorite college football rivalries. But like, yeah, you tell me we're gonna have Bedlam on a random Saturday in April, like, sign me up.
I'll watch that every year. I mean, imagine the other rivalries that you could reignite. You could do Nebraska and Texas. You could do
Nebraska, Colorado.
Yeah,
that we've seen that on the field. We could see that as a spring game. We could see, I'm trying to think of other rivalries that don't get played as much anymore.
Illinois, Kansas, or Illinois, Mizzou. Sorry, is who I'm.
Yeah, Illinois. That's one too. Sure.
Yep. So there's. I mean, Maryland, Virginia, I guess.
I think we could get Oregon State and Wazoo against some old Pac teams.
That'd be cool.
Give them, like, throw them an olive branch a little bit. I don't know if they'd take it at this point.
Yeah.
But but like,
yeah.
But like, maybe that'd be kind of fun if you could. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff you could do with it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it'd be awesome. I'm down for that anytime. And I think you're right. Like Minnesota, NDSU, or I'm sure there's other, South Dakota State, whatever, would be fun.
Or if it's a power conference team, like a nearby Big 12 team, a Kansas.
Yeah.
Something like that. An Iowa State.
Ooh, Iowa State would be cool.
That could be a thing. That could be super fun. Like somewhere that's in driving distance, I think would be cool, so that fans could show up and it could be a whole thing.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
And like, even here's the thing. If you're afraid of linemen getting hurt, play a 7-on-7 game.
Yeah.
You can't hit the quarterback. Quarterback's wearing a red thing and you can't hit him, and you can't hit anybody really. So it's not, it's not football, but it's close enough to football.
Yeah. I think it would give the fans a lot to do and cheer for and get them excited. And also, the players, you get all that, you get bragging rights for a whole year. There's just something that I think goes along with that. And then it may not be the same, but you're keeping that history alive in some way, in some fashion. And I think that's important. And I think a lot of people would get behind that.
Oh, yeah. I think if that became a thing, and I think PJ's even pretending like he thinks that it's a good idea, and he doesn't.
No, he's not.
PJ Fleck is like, I would over my dead body, like, about that. But in public, he's like, oh yeah, that's a fun new idea we're never gonna do. Yeah. That was just. I laughed so hard when he was like, oh yeah, that's a fun idea. I was like, PJ, who went from 3 open practices to 1 over the course of his, per fall or spring camp, and who's like limited media availability, which I don't blame him, because the Twin Cities media sucks.
Yeah, it's terrible.
So he limits it mostly to people who are going to be fair to him, which, that's cool. But like, but the idea that PJ is going to open up his whole program to another team. Yeah, no. You see Matt Rule being like, oh, come in. Yeah, guys, come in, other team. Matt Rule is so paranoid. You kidding me?
There'd have to be a big enough incentive for coaches like that to follow through. Like, obviously there would have to be some financial incentive for them to go through with that, which there could, maybe in the future, so they could work something like that out. But yeah.
You could sell tickets. People would show up.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And you could maybe get it televised on a network. Maybe get it on something bigger than BTN. I don't know. Get it on Fox.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine like the backyard brawl. You could do. There's so much.
Oh yeah. Pitt, Penn State.
Yeah.
Someone might get killed in a touch football game of Pitt, Penn State.
Oh, it'd be amazing though. Like,
yeah, it'd be incredible,
dude. So yeah, there's so many opportunities that I think would be a lot of fun to do. So yeah, man, I'm game for it. I think it's a great idea.
Awesome. All right. Well, from that fun, lighthearted story, we're going to go to kind of a serious story out of Ann Arbor. And for that, I'm going to go right to just quoting Ed White of the Detroit Associated Press. Quote, former NFL and University of Michigan assistant football coach Matt Weiss hacked into the computer accounts of thousands of college athletes seeking intimate photos and videos, according to an indictment filed Thursday. Weiss, who worked for the Baltimore Ravens before joining Michigan staff in 2021, was charged with 14 counts of unauthorized computer access and 10 counts of identity theft. The indictment was filed in a federal court in Detroit. Weiss was fired in 2023 as Michigan's co-offensive coordinator after failing to cooperate with the school's investigation of his access to computers. From 2015 to 2023, Weiss gained access to the databases of more than 100 colleges and universities that were maintained by a third-party vendor, Keffer Development Services, and then downloaded, personal information and medical data of more than 150,000 athletes. The indictment states, close quote.
That is wild.
This is beyond disgusting. This criminal pervert, Matt Weiss, was downloading women's pictures and medical info, and he did this to 150,000 student athletes. That is vile. And you can only imagine what he was doing with those pictures.
What?
Just horrifying. So,
yeah.
First off, let me just say we send out our sincere condolences to all the victims. We're so sorry you were violated in such a personal way. And I'm not big on the carceral system in general, but this guy needs to be punished in accordance with the severity and unbelievable volume of crimes. I mean, 150,000 victims, that's crazy. And I feel bad for all of them. And Matt Weiss is a criminal predator. All right, go ahead.
No, I mean, obviously, you're talking about the intimate images, which is, of course, insanely violating, but you're talking about identity theft. You're talking about financial, medical information that is, there's so many lines that are being crossed here. And 150,000, that's wild, man.
I don't mean to sound glib.
Yeah.
How did he even have time to work?
Well, that's what I'm saying. That was my next question is how did he even accomplish all this when he's got this other job that you would assume was preoccupying the vast majority of his time?
I mean, it's wild because the amount he was co-offensive coordinator at Michigan, that is a job. That is a time. That's a time you're going to work a lot. You're going to work long hours.
Yeah.
So the fact that despite, I can't even imagine you're living your dream as a football coach and then you're living this whole double life, just violating people. It's crazy to me to think. I can't imagine. And how did he have time to do it? Why? Why would you be such an awful person? Why, that's just, I don't understand that at all. And it's obviously, it's not a mistake when you do it 150,000 times. That's more than a pattern. That's an obsession from his part. So
100%.
Yeah. So I throw the book at him, man. It's really gross. And it's alarming that a guy like that was able to ascend to a place to be Michigan's co-offensive coordinator, to be a coach for the Baltimore Ravens.
Did he know someone? Does he have connections on some level that we just don't know about or we're unaware of? Because I don't know.
I mean, all coaches get somewhere because of connections. So
yeah, true.
But who were the connections? I'm sure, but I'm sure the people he knew that helped him out in the profession had no idea he was this, this terrible predator.
Yeah, serial pervert. I mean, that's years. What, 2015 is when they're investigating, to 2021 or 22?
I'm not sure. What did it say exactly? Yeah, it was something like that.
Yeah.
So 2015 to 2023.
Okay. Jeez.
It's a really long time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I assume that this kind of stuff obviously is not tolerated, and shouldn't be. And I assume that there will be some severe consequences, as there should be for this guy. So yeah, man.
Yeah, I mean, his life indicted. Is over. Oh, it's over. It's gone. He's going to spend probably not years, probably decades in jail for that many crimes. It's a lot of crimes.
Well, and we're just uncovering. We don't even, like I said, we don't even know exactly to what extent.
No, and we don't know what else he got away with in the past that before. Because there's no way this is his first time hacking people.
Yep.
Right. Like, this is a guy who's probably been hacking people his whole life.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's really gross.
Yep.
All right. Well, that was unfortunate, but you got to talk about the real stuff sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to a story that is, I mean, honestly, also not that great, but but it's interesting, a really intriguing story at Stanford. So it's Stanford has fired head coach Troy Taylor, but well, first of all, we'll say Taylor was the subject of 2 separate investigations for harassing women in the workplace. So that's really bad. I'm not sure why he wasn't fired after the first investigation into this behavior, but it's crazy to me that he wasn't fired after the second investigation. This was a pattern of behavior at that point. So it's a really bad look for Stanford's athletic department that Taylor wasn't fired after the second investigation. It took ESPN unearthing this months later and the subsequent public embarrassment that resulted from these revelations. So I get that Stanford doesn't have an athletic director currently, and they probably didn't want to make a move. And yeah, they deserve some credit for finally firing Taylor, I guess. But it's a really bad look that it took this public embarrassment for this to happen after the second investigation where he was found to be harassing women in the workplace. Like, I understand maybe the first time offender, maybe you have a policy that they get some sort of rehabilitation and a chance to improve and whatever. And, people, second chances can be good and all that kind of stuff. But, if he went through the whole investigation, was found, guilty of harassing women in the workplace, and then he went right back to harassing women in the workplace and he still didn't get fired. Like, what's going on at Stanford? And he did that at Stanford. What's going on in Palo Alto, man?
Yeah, I mean, of all places, you would think in Northern California, like where that kind of behavior would not be tolerated or swept under the rug. So, yeah, man.
But it looks like it was swept under the rug.
I guess so. Yeah.
And it's also, and I guess the interesting thing here from like just a college football watcher, like 10,000 feet standpoint, is that he was fired. Troy Taylor got fired by general manager Andrew Luck. So not by the athletic director, because they don't have one right now, not by the president, but by the general manager. So Stanford is in a place now where the general manager, the head coach answers to the general manager, and the general manager is in charge, gets to decide if the head coach still has a job or not.
Wow.
So that's really interesting. It is unprecedented, I believe.
I don't remember hearing anything like that happen.
No. So that's like, this is the new reality of college football.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it'll be different at every school. And at a lot of schools, I think the coach will be more powerful than the GM. But it just shows that we are seeing more of an NFL model now.
Yeah.
And these colleges do need, and the people who are, and the person who's keeping track of, your players and keeping track of talent acquisition is going to be just about as important as your head coach going forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you can see how important it is by how much money people are spending and paying these guys now at some of these institutions. So,
oh yeah,
it's wild, man. Like $2.5 million, I think was someone I just saw recently. I can't remember exactly where.
Oh, really? That's wild.
And then I think at North Carolina, it's 1.5, and Bill Belichick's GM. But yeah, I can't remember.
I wonder how much Garrett Chernoff makes at Minnesota. I don't even know.
Probably not $2.5 million.
No, probably not 2.5. But maybe but if revenue sharing in the next TV deal is totally possible, he could be making that much money. In a few years,
Could be. Yep.
Yeah, that's really so that's interesting from that perspective. Obviously, the main thing with Stanford is, like, again, we're in the year 2025 and women are still getting harassed in the workplace, and that's just really sad. We went through the whole Me Too thing, and this is still happening, and if it's happening at Stanford of all places, then you can bet it's happening at a lot of other places too.
Yeah.
So that really sucks. But the interesting part from the college football standpoint, is that GM Andrew Luck made that decision and said, we can't go forward with this guy as our coach anymore.
Yeah.
And so it'll be really interesting. I think the question is, Does Stanford now try to hire a new head coach without an AD? Does Andrew Luck say, hey, president of Stanford, together we're going to go find an AD? Or do they just retain one of the coaches as an interim coach until they can hire a new AD? I think it's the latter, right? I think they're going to have to get a new AD and then get a permanent new coach. Because here's the thing. If you go get the coach first, it's going to limit what kind of athletic director you can get. Because an athletic director isn't going to want to come in and have to get behind a coach they didn't help pick.
Yeah.
So if you want to get a good athletic director, you're going to have to bring them in before you get a new coach. So, man, it's really rough, but it could be a really lost season for Stanford football this year.
Yeah. Well, hopefully
Troy Taylor has joined the Mel Tucker group of total idiots who harass women and deservedly lose their jobs for it.
It's just, it amazes me when this kind of stuff happens and you're making millions upon millions of dollars to coach football at a Division I level with D1 athletes, and you still just can't keep your stuff together enough to, like, I don't know, not be a jerk. Like, I don't or be inappropriate.
Systemic misogyny, man. It's like it's baked into society, or God, dudes wouldn't keep doing it. You know,
it's wild.
It's something we need to get over. We need to figure out a way to fix. That's for sure.
Yeah.
All right, and now to our last piece of college football news. John, I'm going to start you off with a quote that kind of shocked me. And this is Mike Locksley, Maryland head coach, talking about the 2024 season. And he said, quote, "For me, I thought for my first time as a coach, I lost my locker room. And to me, that's a strength of mine, the locker room. It's the first time that at Maryland, we dealt with haves and have-nots," close quote. So first off, people are interpreting the haves and have-nots as a shot at Billy Edwards for chasing a bigger bag and maybe not being totally dialed in down the stretch last year at Maryland because he was focused on getting paid. So that's interesting also, that Locksley would potentially, if that's true, we don't know for sure, if he's casually, throwing shade at his guy. But I could see, man, Locksley has such a good track record of developing quarterbacks that I'm sure he was shocked to have his starting quarterback stolen and walk out the door and get stolen by a fellow conference team in Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that had to have been jarring for him. And to add intrigue to this whole thing, Maryland kicks off Big Ten play this year against Wisconsin in September. So you can bet Mike Locksley and the Terrapins have that one circled in bright red. Yeah. They want revenge against Billy Edwards for leaving the way he did. And apparently, if he was a locker room problem, that's what Mike Locksley seems to be implying here, like that's intense. And that makes this, and this is a huge must-win game for both teams too.
Oh yeah.
Because Mike Locksley is on the hottest of hot seats. So every game is going to be scrutinized, and he could really, like, if he gets a win to start Big Ten play and can get to 4-0, that could quiet a lot of the hot seat talk.
Mm-hmm.
And if he plays against Wisconsin and gets run off the field by a team that went 5-7 last year, that could accelerate a lot of the talk. And Luke Fickell, man, Luke Fickell's going to be Bill Connolly of ESPN, his SP Plus. He's projecting Wisconsin to win 5 games this year. So Luke Fickell can't afford to have lose to Maryland.
No,
not with that schedule. Not with that absolute gauntlet that Wisconsin has. Wisconsin has arguably the toughest schedule in the entire country this coming year.
Yep.
Starting with Alabama in the non-conference, having to play most of the helmet schools in the Big Ten. It's tough. It's a tough schedule. So that game, man, I now have it circled. That is must watch TV for me personally. And you can bet that Mike Locksley and Luke Fickell are going to be so fake before the game, pretending like everything's all cool, when really they're thinking, I'm going to murder you and your team, and I have to, or I'm going to lose my job.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be intense. All of that said, John, back to the original story. If I was a head coach and I lost the locker room one year, you would have to torture that out of me. There's no way I'd admit it publicly. I'm not even sure I admit it to my colleagues. I might tell my significant other, but as a secret in the dead of night with no cell phones in the room. Like you'd have a hard time torturing that out of me because you're just admitting that you fully failed as a head coach. The number one job of any head coach is to convince his players to buy in and play hard. If you can't manage that, then you're just not a very good head coach, period. So on the one hand, I want to praise Mike Locksley for his honesty. I wish more coaches were this honest with the media. I do.
Yeah.
I respect that in a way. But on the other hand, I am thinking, dude, you can't just admit you completely failed in your number one job as head coach of the Maryland Terrapins. You can't say that out loud. You can't do it, man. So I don't know, man. What do you think about it? This story blew me away. I can't believe Mike Locksley said this.
I mean, look, like Locksley has always been known for his brutal honesty, but not in a way, I guess, like pertaining to himself. And not to say he's ever like hiding anything either, but like you, no, I would never say this. I feel like you're now to publicly announce that like that. It's not a good look to your employers, to your players, to your other assistant coaches. It's just to the fans, like it's just there's a vote of no confidence now. Like how do you go into this season
to your team, man? Your team.
yeah, to your players.
Now they're thinking, oh, our other guy's gonna quit on me.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, in the locker room, deep down, and maybe you even talk to your team and you're like, hey, we lost some guys. Like a lot of you stayed with me, but we lost some guys and it cost us. But like, again, not in public.
Yeah.
In public?
Yep.
Dude.
I know I don't know the last time or if ever I've heard a head coach say something like that publicly.
I don't think ever, man, because how could you?
Yeah.
Can you imagine Nick Saban coming out and telling anybody he lost the locker room?
No.
You know what I mean?
No.
Like no chance. No chance. So yeah, dude, as much as we both like Mike Locksley, everything that keeps happening just tells me that he's going to be an offensive coordinator sooner than later and not a head coach anymore.
Yep.
Yeah. And not only that, man, on top of that, he's in a turf war right now. Maryland's basketball coach is openly campaigning to get more NIL money out of Maryland. And he's saying he's in the Sweet 16. He deserves more money. And basically saying Locksley doesn't deserve the money he's getting as much as he does. So Locksley's under fire, man. He is under fire.
Wow. Yeah. It's a scary time to be a Terrapin fan, that's for sure. And
oh yeah.
But I think Locksley, I mean, we've said it for a couple of years now, and I think if anything, he should be an offensive coordinator. I mean, I just don't think he was built to be a head coach personally.
Here's the good news: they have a really favorable schedule this year. So if Locksley can get to 7 or 8 wins, I think he could save his job. I don't know, man. I'm really worried about what it's going to look like this year.
Well, are we expecting MJ Morris to be the starting quarterback, or is he?
I don't even know.
I don't even know.
I don't even know who they have at quarterback now.
Yeah. Oof. All right. I mean, we'll get into that when we do, team breakdowns and whatnot.
Yes.
But oof.
Yeah.
All right.
At least, hey, Terrapins fans, you enjoy this March Madness run.
Absolutely.
Enjoy it. Live it up. Because it might be a rough year next year, but then you'll be looking at a new coach probably, and that's always exciting. So yeah, enjoy the hoops because right now the football is looking yikes.
Yep. Yeah.
All right. Should we get into our 16-team March Madness tournament?
Let's do it.
All right. So I'll pull it up on the screen. So we seeded, for people who are not watching, who are just listening, we seeded not all the teams. As we said, we decided to give Ohio State and Oregon a break. So they will not be in these seedings. But we seeded the other 16 teams in the Big Ten 1 through 16. And then we're going to discuss each game and how it went and how we would do it. And at the end, we'll show you who John has as a winner. And we'll see if I agree with him.
Okay.
All right. Should we start right with 116 and just go do it that way?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So we've got the number 1 ranked. Oh, and I should tell everyone what all the rankings are, right?
Yeah,
For
let's
people who are
do it.
just
Yeah,
listening.
we'll do it.
Okay.
Yep.
So we've got number 1 Penn State, number 2 Michigan, number 3 Illinois, number 4 Indiana, number 5 Iowa, number 6 Minnesota, number 7 USC, number 8 Washington, number 9 Nebraska, number 10 Rutgers, number 11 Wisconsin, number 12 Michigan State, 13 is UCLA, 14 is Northwestern, 15 is Maryland, 16 is Purdue.
Yep.
So the first game we have is the 116 game, Penn State versus Purdue. And, you look at Penn State, they got Drew Aller coming back. They have the best running backs in the best running back tandem in the country, and Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen coming back. They got multiple guys on offense and defense who could have entered the draft to come back with good NIL packages, like defensive end. Like, yes, Abdul Carter's gone, but they've got denied Dennis Sutton back, who is also a really damaging defensive end. And they upgraded their defensive coordinator by stealing Jim Knowles from the Buckeyes, going to Tom Allen, who is already a really good coordinator, to Jim Knowles, who is probably the best defensive coordinator in the entire country at this point right now, today, in this moment in 2025. It is fair to say Jim Knowles is the best based on what he did at Ohio State and also what he did at Oklahoma State before that.
It's wild that anyone could steal a coordinator from Ohio State, especially one who just came off a national title.
But Penn State has not been shy, because the year before this year, they stole Andy Kotelnicki from Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
And he is arguably, I won't say he's by far the best like we do with Jim Knowles, but he's arguably the best offensive coordinator in the country.
Yeah.
He would be on a very short list of offensive coaches if I could have a coach, whom I would pick to be my offensive coordinator. So I guess what I'm saying is Penn State's loaded up coaches. They've loaded up holding on to guys, getting guys to stay in school. And then, in the transfer portal, they brought in some good guys, and looks like a potential star receiver it's Devontae Ross?
Yep.
Right? Yeah. And they brought in some other guys too. So it really feels like Penn State's year. And then you flip that, you look at Purdue, and not only do they lose their head coach, Ryan Walters, they're starting over with Barry Odom.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like when Kurt Signetti went to Indiana, he was able to keep Indiana's best players.
Yeah.
And then bring in his own really good players and immediately have a really good team. Purdue's best players walked out the door.
Yeah.
En masse. They walked out the door. They now play for Oregon, and they play for Indiana, and they play for Minnesota, and they play for, Ohio State. They got some good players. They're gone. So Barry Odom is starting over from scratch. So, John, how are you seeing this one?
I mean, I think it's a given. Penn State will roll Purdue, and there won't be any. It's not even competition at this point in time. So yeah, Penn State moves on.
It's going to be biblical.
Yeah.
Like, this is going to be some Old Testament justice meted out by the Nittany Lions to the Boilermakers. I think Purdue, of that, was it it was 70, 66-0 against Indiana? Something like that.
Yeah, I think so.
I think it's going to be something like that.
Yeah. Yep.
That's what I expect. I think eventually James Franklin will call off the Dogs. But even when he calls off the Dogs, they might score some points just by accident. Just running the ball.
Yep.
Yeah. So Purdue, another team that's having a nice run in March. So good for them. Enjoy that, Purdue. I hope the hoops turns out great. Be rooting for you. But yeah, Barry Odom though. Barry Odom's a good coach. He could, if he can get the NIL money, I think he can improve Purdue. And I think the fact just that he's got some transfers coming in, I think they'll be more competitive than they were last year, even with the guys they lost, because Barry Odom, I think, is a better coach than Ryan Walters.
Yeah, I agree. But in terms of this 16-team playoff, yeah, I mean, I think they're done for sure. But yeah, I think yeah.
This one's over. This one's over when they flip the coin.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, they get off the bus and the teams look at each other, and the Penn State says, "Yeah, we're moving on."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Should we go to number 2 Michigan against number 15 Maryland?
Mm-hmm.
So Maryland just hired a new defensive coordinator. They're breaking in a new QB yet again after Billy Edwards bolted on them in the offseason. There are again serious problems on the O-line and D-line. They did pick up a really good recruit, but he's a 2026 guy and won't be there until then. Michigan, by contrast, they're just going to have better QB play. Whether that's Mikey Keene or Bryce Underwood, there's just no way that they could be worse than they were last year.
Yeah.
Like I don't see it at all. Likewise, UMass transfer Anthony Simpson could be wide receiver 1 this year. Indiana wide receiver transfer Donovan McCulley was impressive in 2023. He couldn't crack Signetti's deep lineup, but maybe he could go to Michigan and do something big. And man, if you had told me a year ago that Michigan would need to go to Indiana's castoffs to field a good receiving core, I would have laughed, but here we are.
I know.
And it's a possible change of scenery is exactly what McCulley needs to break out once again. There are also some young guys coming up who could prove themselves and turn out to be the guy. So yeah, man, I know the saying is crab cakes in football, but I see this one being pretty lopsided. What do you think?
Yeah, I see it pretty lopsided. Maybe not as lopsided as Penn State and Purdue, but definitely just dominance from start to finish from Michigan. I would expect, just because of style of play, it would be a lower scoring because Michigan's just going to run the ball at you. Not that Penn State won't do the same, but I just don't think Maryland, as we've seen, I don't have confidence that their defense is going to be any better. And so I think Michigan will just absolutely dominate.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm with you. All right, now let's go down. Let's go down to the 8-9 game. Let's jump around a little bit, make it fun. We'll go down each side of the bracket back and forth. And we have, and also forgot to say, and this is important, this is our Big Ten bracket, and thus these are all home games.
Yes.
Like these are all played on campus, is what I'm saying.
Yep.
Like, so don't imagine this on some neutral site. It's not. Penn State had Purdue in Beaver Stadium in front of probably a whiteout. So, just keep that in mind. That's how we're rolling with this. So Michigan likewise had Maryland at home.
The higher seed
in Ann Arbor.
Yeah, higher seed gets to play at home.
Yes. So that's key for this next one, the 8-9 game. So we've got Washington 8 and Nebraska 9. And this is an interesting one, John, because the two of us had these reversed.
Mm-hmm.
I had Nebraska 8 and Washington 9. So why don't you start out talking about this game and how you see it breaking down?
Well, I think that for me, it comes down to quarterback play and dynamics on the ability to be dynamic on offense. I know Nebraska, and this is, another year of experience with Dylan Raiola, and I expect him to improve. But there was nothing to me last year that flashed to a point with him that made me think like, oh my God, this guy could be some next level talent. I think he's going to be a good quarterback, a good college quarterback. I think he's going to be solid. He's only going to get smarter as he plays. I think he's going to make better decisions. But I'm not sure even if he does improve significantly enough that they're going to have the receiving talent to be able to put up enough points. And I'm not seeing, I know that they have some good expectations for their running backs. And again, it's just, I got to see the proof when it comes to their offensive line to provide any space for them and lanes for those running backs to run through, and being able to protect Dylan Raiola well enough. Now, with Washington, I just saw it in their quarterback. I think the quarterback is really dynamic. He's total dual threat. He's really tough to contain. Plus, Washington has the receiving talent. They just do, and when they're on, they're freaking electric. So to me, I think it's going to be a close game. I think the defenses, I probably would give that lean Nebraska as far as defense goes. But Washington wasn't as bad as I thought they might have been last year. And I think with Ryan Walters there at the helm, it's going to get more sound. He may not have his guys to run his system, but I expect them to be very disciplined and maybe even a bit more aggressive to keep that pressure up on Raiola. So I think Jed Fish is a good coach. Matt Rule is as well. But Washington surprised me last year and did better than I was expecting. And so I think Matt Rule is definitely going to, be improved. And I think it's going to be a really tough game. I think it's going to be super close. But I just think with the offensive firepower, Washington's going to be able to pull it off.
See, that's interesting. I agree about the offensive firepower. I think the fact that you've got Damon Williams is a real dual threat, and Jonah Coleman is an elite running back.
Yes, I forgot to mention him. Yep.
Between the two of them, you're going to have a really electric running game, probably.
Yep.
Like, unless your offensive line is just terrible with those guys, they're going to be able to be their own blocker, and those are the kind of guys, both of them, who can make people miss.
Yep.
And that's a big deal. So I think their running game is going to be really good. They do lose a lot at receiver, so it'll be interesting to see how the receiver shakes out. But I will say Jed Fish in his history has.
But they got Boston coming back, right? Like,
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the other guy is gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hunter?
No.
Boston and
not Giles Jackson, is it? No.
Oh no.
I'm totally blanking right now.
Denzel Boston and Giles.
Was it Giles Jackson?
I think so. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Okay. Yeah. But he's gone.
Okay.
So, but I trust Jed Fish to figure out receiver and have the guys. So I think Washington and Nebraska, they weren't great at running back or receiver last year. And they brought some guys in the portal, and they have some guys they think are set to break out, but it's not nearly as proven as what Washington has. Mm-hmm. However, that said, Washington struggled in the trenches last year. They really did. And Jed Fish came out and said that, and that they needed to get bigger and more athletic on the offensive and defensive lines.
Mm-hmm.
So for us to put Washington through, you got to convince me that Washington isn't as good as Nebraska on the lines, maybe, but that they're good enough to compete with Nebraska. And that's my fear. Are they good enough to compete with Nebraska? That said, Nebraska's D-line, while it's still going to be good, there's not a Nash Hutmacher on it this year.
Exactly.
So if they don't have a game wrecker, maybe Washington can keep up a little better. So I'll be honest, I'm voting the other way. I think if I'm picking it, I've got Nebraska winning narrowly just because of the strength in the trenches. But I think it's a coin flip, and we'll go with you because Washington is the home team, and I do think that in a game this close, you can give it to the home team for sure and not feel bad about it at all.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got Washington, number 8, narrowly going through over Nebraska, the 9 seed. All right, next up, we have number 7, USC, and number 10, Rutgers. Now, this is a really interesting game. Rutgers, I think they're going to be better on defense this year because I think they might not be as good in the secondary because they lost some guys, but I think that with Mohamed Toure back, they'll be better at stopping the run this year significantly. And then USC, man, I don't know what to expect from USC. Are the new receivers good enough? Probably, because Lincoln Riley generally knows what he wants in receivers. So I would assume that he's going to have receivers, and it's USC. So I assume that the receiver thing is going to work itself out. I want to know, is the quarterback going to be Jaden Mayava, or is it going to be Hassan Longstreet? Because if it's Longstreet, then I feel a lot better about USC. Because I just think about USC and Rutgers, and I could see USC being ahead and thinking they have it. And then Lincoln Riley wanted to go for the kill shot, throwing it downfield. And Jaden Mayava just throwing balls up for grabs, maybe throwing a couple picks.
Yep.
And giving Rutgers a chance to win the game. So it's talent-wise, SC definitely has the advantage. But coaching-wise, I think Rutgers definitely has the advantage, except for the fact, and this is what changed it for me, that Rutgers actually has Rob Smith as a defensive coordinator.
Oh.
And dude, I believe that Mohamed Toure himself will be awesome, but I don't believe in Rob Smith. I don't believe Rob Smith is capable of coaching a competent defense. I think he puts way too much on guys' plates, and they play tentative, and they get killed.
Yes.
So because of that, I've got USC going through here. What do you think?
Here's the only the argument I will make for Rutgers is in the Rob Smith situation. I think if there's anyone who could maybe push Rob Smith into becoming a competent defensive coordinator who doesn't put too much on their players' plates, it's Greg Schiano. I think he might be able to rein him in and work him out a little bit more and maybe make him to be like at least a halfway decent defensive coordinator. And I also got to give it, I got to give it to the fact that I think Samuel Brown, the next running back, is primed to also be great. I'm not saying he'll be Kyle Monangai great, but I think he's going to be a really good running back. I think he's faster than Monangai.
What about the guy from the bowl game? Wasn't that Raymond?
And Raymond. Sorry, that's actually who I meant. Sorry, yeah, Raymond is the one that I meant to say. And he's
he looks legit.
He's legit, and he's slippery, and he's fast and quick as hell. So he looks good, and but again, you also have to factor in Athan. Where Athan Kaliakmanis, is also very cold, hot and cold, man. So what quarterback are you getting? And so that's just it.
And the game's in LA at the Coliseum.
There's that too. So I think the fact that you're looking at two quarterbacks that I don't trust.
Yeah.
I think the fact that yes, it's a home game for USC and the talent advantage goes to USC. I'm gonna pick USC, but I think that it's closer than what Lincoln Riley would be comfortable with.
Oh, yeah.
Because Schiano is going to be able to adjust and make it really, really hard for him. And I think, Rob Smith might not be great, but I think that Schiano himself will just have that team disciplined enough to make this a really difficult task. And so I think USC does win, but it's not going to look good. It's going to be a messy, ugly win for USC.
Yeah, I'm with you. I also think it's going to be an ugly game. All right. Next up, we have number 4, Indiana versus number 13, UCLA. So this is a really interesting one for me. I think Indiana has a lot back, but they're also starting over in a lot of ways. And a lot of people are just assuming that Fernando Mendoza is going to step in and everything's just going to click like it did with Curtis Rourke. And maybe it will. And they do have all those receivers back, which makes me think there's a good chance it'll click. I don't know. I don't think it's a sure thing. I think, Indiana had some injuries last year, plus just first year lack of depth. They weren't great on the offensive line,
Yeah.
so they could be a little better on the O-line. I don't know if they're going to be as good on the defensive line. I think they, I'm forgetting the guy's name, but not Kamara, but the guy who they always double teamed all the time. But he's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And so I worry about that a little bit. That said, there's a lot of enthusiasm going on in Bloomington. And also, I kind of think that Kurt Signetti walks on water at this point. So I look at that compared to UCLA. And UCLA I think they'll be good on defense, pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And their offense should be improved this year.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced they have a really good quarterback.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, when it comes to UCLA, I'm not convinced they have a really good quarterback, and they need to develop a run game. And I don't know if that's there either.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, they didn't have great receiver play last year, but they lost one of their more reliable guys in Logan Loya to Minnesota.
Yeah.
Their slot receiver. And he was pretty productive for them. But they brought some other guys in too, and Tino Sunseri, most importantly, at offensive coordinator. I think UCLA is going to be improved this year.
Yeah.
But in Bloomington, in front of that home crowd that's now energized, coming off the best season they've had in living memory. The best seasons they had since 1967 anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I got to pick the Hoosiers here.
Same for, all the reasons you said. If I had more faith in UCLA's offense, I would maybe think it would be closer. I would still pick Indiana, but
yeah,
I just don't think UCLA is going to be able to score enough points. And so that's where I'm at. Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be like last year. I don't think it's just like a beating, right?
No, I think UCLA's defense will put up a good fight.
Yeah, I think UCLA will have them in it for a while, but I think eventually, those run plays build up and go from 1 yard to 2 yard to 5 yards, and then all of a sudden you're hitting those Elijah Surratt passes over the top, and then you're done.
Yeah.
Right on. All right. So we've got Indiana going in over UCLA. So that brings us over back to the other side of the bracket. We have number 3 Illinois against number 14 Northwestern.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I mean, John,
the land of Lincoln Trophy.
The land of Lincoln Trophy. I love it. Love getting a rivalry game. Love that. That's great. This one's gonna be played in Champaign. I believe that Northwestern will be competent on defense this year. I do.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't believe in their skill position players, and I don't believe in Preston Stone at quarterback, who lost his job to Kevin Jennings last year. It was Stone's job to lose. He fully lost it. Now I'm supposed to believe that in a tougher conference like the Big Ten, with more athletic, bigger defenses, suddenly Stone's going to go back to his 2023 ACC form when he doesn't have a great supporting cast. I don't see it. I think the O-line should be somewhat better. I do. They made some moves there to bring guys in, but I just think Stone's going to be a problem once again. And then the other side, you've got an Illini team with 18 starters back. Luke Altmaier is the best quarterback they've had since Juice Williams. And 18 starters, the only question mark is wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
And Bielema and Illinois, both, even when Illinois has been bad, they can usually figure out wide receiver.
Yeah.
So now with Illinois being this good, I got to believe that Illinois is going to be good on defense. And I think along with being a really good passing team, I think that, Illinois will bounce back and run the ball a little better this year too.
Mm-hmm.
I think they'll be a little healthier at running back probably.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I just think the offensive line, it's Bielema's baby, the offensive line. They were subpar run blocking last year. I just don't believe he's going to have a subpar run blocking line 2 years in a row.
Well, I think it's subpar offensive line, but also they really did have the injury bug in their backfield. I feel like it was every couple of weeks, like somebody got dinged up, and so no, I don't think anyone
Yeah.
really played a full season. So you're gonna have to, as
No.
long as they stay healthy, I think that they're gonna be dominant. And so but let's theoretically they are healthy in this game. They're playing at home, and it's Brett Bielema and this
Brett Bielema,
Illinois
man.
team, which is getting a lot of buzz, and rightfully so. They just came off 10 wins, and Northwestern struggling, man.
Yeah.
It's not an easy job, and I think they're just still trying to find out who they are, and so it's going to be Illinois. I think Illinois just absolutely destroys Northwestern in this one. I don't think it's really a competition at all.
I mean, I think the rivalry aspect will keep it close for like a quarter and a half.
Yeah.
But Illinois is too athletic, too skilled, too big, too strong.
Yeah.
And Luke Altmaier is just too savvy.
Yep.
For that to, So I am with you. All right. Moving on to our next game. We have number 5 Iowa at Kinnick Field hosting number 12 Michigan State. Now, this is an interesting game because Michigan State upset Iowa last year in Jonathan Smith's first year.
Yep.
So I think Sparty's going to be better this year. I think Aiden Childs is going to make fewer mistakes. I think Marsh is in his second year will be more reliable as a go-to top receiver. And I think the defense, most importantly, in year 2 under Joe Rossi, it will take a real step forward.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a lot of good things for Michigan State. That said, Kirk Ferentz and Mark Gronowski has the best quarterback he's had in a while.
Long while. Yeah.
Long, like at least 6-7 years long.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think that's a big deal. I think Iowa will always run the ball well. They aren't going to be, they don't have a Caleb Johnson. They'll be a very interesting, I think that they don't have that guy who can just take over the game.
Yeah.
But they have good running backs. And Moulton is a very good running back, a very solid Big Ten starting running back. Phil Parker's defense, I've got to imagine they'll be a little better this year than they were last year in the secondary.
Yeah.
They had some struggles in the secondary. So I think Iowa will be better in the secondary, but I think Michigan State will be better at receiver. The thing about Michigan State's defense in this matchup is that Joe Rossi wants to wait for you to make a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
And Kirk Ferentz wants to not make a mistake. And that could be a really interesting stalemate.
Yeah.
And I think whoever gets the better of that matchup wins the game. Because I think Iowa needs to force a turnover or something. Because again, who is QB Mark Gronowski throwing to? Who's he throwing to? Does he have they brought in anyone in the transfer portal who scares you at all?
No.
Do they have anyone on the roster that would start for another Big Ten team as a top 2, let's say as a top 2 receiver?
I mean, maybe Vanderzee, I think, but
where? As a top 2 receiver?
Yeah.
I think most of the teams in the Big Ten have 2 receivers better than him.
Most, I mean, like Northwestern, maybe.
Maybe Northwestern, they lost a couple guys.
Purdue.
Okay.
Nebraska.
Even Maryland, I'm sure, has better. I would bet has better wide receiver talent. They always do.
I bet Maryland does, but like maybe Nebraska.
You really wanted to get Nebraska in there, didn't you?
No, but it's true. I mean, like, come on.
No, you're right. They haven't, but they're not proven. They're not proven.
I mean, honestly, and I don't want to say, I don't think this is true necessarily, but like you can make an argument, at least for last year, like, Michigan, Michigan didn't have anybody to throw to really. So
no, you're right.
There's a possibility for some places, but not many. No.
I am kind of smelling upset here, John. What are you thinking?
I wanted to pick upset. I really did. Because I do think Michigan State is going to be a lot better, and I could see it go both. To me, this is a coin flip.
Yeah,
that's where this is for me. I think I just think that right now, Iowa and Kirk Ferentz have to prove that they can field a competent offense and that they can throw the ball.
Without a running back who's just better than everyone else.
Exactly. So there's something to prove there. There's something to prove that they need to be able to throw the ball through the air. And they're going to have a solid offensive line. They're going to have a solid defensive line. They're going to be good in the trenches because they always are. Their defense is going to be good and, above average to great because it's Phil Parker.
Yep.
And the running game is going to be solid. So I think right now it might be a challenge, but I just have a feeling that this year, I don't think they're going to be prolific or anything like that, but I think Iowa is going to be able to throw the ball well enough and be just as stingy as they always are on defense that it's going to cause enough problems for Aiden Childs. And I think at this point, I still don't trust him enough to not make a mistake and throw a pick.
Yeah, that's true. Against the Phil Parker secondary, he's gonna bait you into mistakes. He's gonna set little traps like a mouse trap for you.
Yep.
And if you take the cheese, and Aiden, you're right, Aiden Childs has not proven that he won't take the cheese. So I think you've talked me into it. I was thinking upset for a minute, but I think you've talked me into it. I think we've got the Iowa Hawkeyes pulling out, but I think it's close.
I think so too. And again, I mean, it could, in reality, yes, I think it could go either way. And I could see Michigan State winning, but to me right now, I have more faith in Iowa. Plus it's at Kinnick. It's really hard to win at Kinnick. So,
yeah. So next up, we have number 6 Minnesota hosting number 11 Wisconsin. So here's what I'm going to say to everybody out there. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh, Minnesota 6. We picked Minnesota 6th last year, and where did going into the season? Or no, we picked them 7th.
Yeah.
And where did they finish? They finished tied for 6th.
Yep.
With a winning record in the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm.
So, just going to say, anyone who wants to flex on us about the Minnesota seeding, we were right last year.
Well, and it's not even just Minnesota. We were right about a lot of other teams. Not saying everything, but we were more spot on, I think, than others because we didn't buy into the hype that the national media was trying to shove down everybody's throat.
No, we were right about USC and Nebraska, especially.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we might know what we're talking about. I don't know.
Maybe.
Sometimes.
This might be something we spend a little bit of time researching obsessively all the time.
Yes.
Awesome. So we've got another, just to remind everybody, rivalry. We've got the Axe game.
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota hosting Wisconsin. I mean, here's the thing. If this were during the season, then I'd have to say, is Luke Fickell still the coach? But it's not because I do think, Bill Connolly of ESPN with his SP Plus, he projects Wisconsin to win 5 games this year against what's an admittedly brutal schedule.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But if Wisconsin wins 5 games this year, they could be in a really desperate place going into that Axe game. If they only have 4 or 5 wins going into the Minnesota game to end the year. But this isn't that. So we take that all out the window and just evaluate the teams as they are. I think that Wisconsin should show some improvement defensively. They've got another year in the system.
Mm-hmm.
I know they lose Hunter Wooler. But they've got, I feel like Luke Fickell's brought in enough guys. I know they lost Xavier Lucas and some guys in the portal, but I feel like he's brought in enough guys that Wisconsin is going to be a little better defensively than they were last year. My question is, and I think that Billy Edwards will be better than Braden Luck for sure.
Yes.
Absolutely better than Braden Luck.
Agreed.
Wisconsin's got some, they've got some interesting skill players. They've got the running back that everyone is talking about now that if you'll, that'll have you believe is the next big thing is Darian Dupree.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got Dylan Jones and Cade Yakimelli. We know Cade Yakimelli is pretty average to, slightly below average. Let's be honest.
He's like a fullback, man. Like that.
He's like
he's good for like 2 to 3 yards, maybe.
He's fine. He's he's fine in a below average way. He can pass block. He can do stuff like that. He's not a great wide receiver. Tresh Kekahuna's back, Vinny Anthony. And then the question is, can Jaden Ballard break out? I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then they got the Ball State transfer, Tanner Koziel from Ball State. Sorry if I'm doing that wrong. Tucker Ashcraft. So like, they should be better this year a little bit. Like, I think Wisconsin should be a more put together team for sure.
Yeah.
Minnesota brings back a lot on a defense that ranked 11th in the country last year in defensive efficiency. And also on top of that, Minnesota is projected to be a top 5 Big Ten defense in Bill Connolly's SB Plus this year. I just saw the Gophers practice yesterday, and I do think I was really impressed by what I saw. I think in the secondary, they're going to be really good. I think the question is, does Minnesota have the depth on the defensive line? And do they have a rush end who can replace the production of Danny Strigo?
Mm-hmm.
Because we got Anthony Smith. We know he's great. We've got 3 defensive line starters we know are very, very good players.
Yeah.
Who steps up in that rush end spot?
Yeah.
So that's my question for the defense. And also at the other corner across from Zaquan Bryant, I think it'll probably be Bowden, the FCS transfer, but I'm not sure. Minnesota's had very good luck with their FCS transfer corners. They've put them in the NFL. Trey Jones got an NFL shot. Ethan Robinson just blew up Minnesota's pro day with a 42-inch vertical. And, and looks like a guy who maybe won't get drafted. He'll be an undrafted free agent kind of guy, have a chance to make a roster. Maybe catch on doing special teams, something like that. So, Minnesota's got a lot back on defense. I think at linebacker, they're going to be solid. Yes, they'll miss Cody Lindenberg a little bit, but Maverick Baranowski looks good, and they have some up-and-coming young guys who got time last year. Devin Williams is back. They got some guys back.
Yeah.
The biggest thing for me when I look at this matchup is the skill players. And not only does Minnesota have Darius Taylor back, who's an elite Big Ten running back, both running and catching the ball.
Yeah.
Both running and receiving. He's elite. He had over 50 catches last year when the Minnesota offensive line. And the question is, right, I think Brian Callahan, Minnesota's offensive line coach, I view him a lot like I view Brett Bielema. Last year was the first year in PJ Fleck's whole tenure, since his first year when we were bad at everything. But not counting that first year, last year was the first year that Minnesota was not a good run blocking team.
Yep.
And I just don't believe for a second that Brian Callahan and PJ Fleck are going to have 2 below average run blocking teams in a row. I just don't think that's going to happen. They brought in some guys in the transfer portal. They have some guys coming up who have gotten experience, who are younger, who are upperclassmen now. They're going to be old on the offensive line. I think maybe there's not a star like an Ariante Ursary on the offensive line this year, but I think the sum of the whole is going to be a little better.
Yeah.
And I think Wisconsin's going to be better too. But then I look at wide receiver. Javon Tracy, man, he did big things at Miami, Ohio. Looks like a number 1 receiver. He looked like a number 1 receiver when I saw him yesterday.
Yeah.
He looked legit. Logan Loya from UCLA looked good. Malachi Coleman has reportedly been turning heads throughout spring ball. So
Hopefully. Yeah.
Hopefully, but we can't count on it. I'm not counting on it. Jamison Gears at tight end looks great. He started to really come on. He did lose us the Rutgers game. But besides that, he did. But besides that, he came on really strong down the stretch last year.
Yeah.
I just think, and Drake Lindsay at quarterback. Now, Billy Edwards has the experience advantage, but Drake Lindsay's got the arm advantage.
Yeah.
I mean, Drake Lindsay has the biggest arm I've seen on a Gopher quarterback since Adam Weber in the late 2000s, mid-late 2000s. And honestly, I don't think Weber has the kind of arm that Drake Lindsay has. He made this throw yesterday where I was like, oh, that's a pick, because he threw it off his back foot, and falling down because the defender was right on top of him. And he whipped it so hard on a rope. just muscled it, just all armed it on a frozen rope and completed it. And I was like, so I think this is be a close game. I think this is a tougher. I don't think it's like last year. I don't think Minnesota's just going to run Wisconsin off the field.
Yeah.
But if I think that Minnesota is going to be a little better on defense than Wisconsin, but Wisconsin will also be good defensively. And then for me, it comes down to I just trust Minnesota's skill players more than I trust Wisconsin's skill players at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel the same. I think it. Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be a little bit closer. I expect Wisconsin to be more sound, more disciplined. But yeah, I think that the talent advantage goes to Minnesota, and again, you're also dealing with another equally, or in my opinion, more disciplined team, and just like a team that gels, so. Yeah, I think Minnesota's a more complete team and will win this game. I think they'll win at least by, I would say at least 2 scores, but I don't think Wisconsin gets. But I don't think Wisconsin gets shut out or anything like that. I think they put up some points.
It's not like last year when Minnesota almost shut them out.
Yeah, should have, but
should have.
Somebody
should have
messed up.
It's all right. Won the game. That's what matters. But yeah, okay. So we've got Minnesota going through, but it being a pretty tough game, winning the axe and moving on. So now we are on to the second round, John.
Mm-hmm.
So should we go back up to the corner? We've got number 1 Penn State against number 8 Washington. We talked about all the reasons we like Washington. Like their skill players. Do I believe for a second that Washington is ready to roll with Penn State in the trenches? No, man.
Nope.
No chance. And on top of that, you've got Damon Williams, who's played like 2 or 3 games, versus Drew Aller, who's played 3 years.
Yep.
I don't think this one's close.
Yeah.
Like, I like Washington. I think they had, I think they're going to have a nice year. I think they're going to be improved from last year. But I think Penn State could win the whole Big Ten, including Ohio State and Oregon. When you include them, I think they could win the whole Big Ten.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got them beating Washington. What do you think?
Yeah, same. I think Penn State continues to roll. Washington just isn't going to be able to compete. They're not. They're just going to get smothered the entire time. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. So we've got Penn State and Beaver Stadium holding it down, taking down the Huskies. Next up, we have number 2 Michigan against number 7 USC. So, that's a really interesting matchup. Like just helmet wise, that's like that's one where the TV studios are gonna be like, this is great, blah blah blah. All that kind of stuff.
I want them both to wear their home jerseys though. Like that's like the home color. Oh, dude,
I want to do that more.
We should. Yes.
Like
don't USC and UCLA do that?
UCLA and UCLA do it every year.
We should totally do that.
I don't know why Minnesota and Wisconsin don't do it. Like I get why Minnesota and Iowa don't do it because we both wear gold.
Yeah.
We both wear yellow.
Wisconsin, come on.
But Wisconsin, we don't share any colors.
No.
So there's no reason why we can't go. If they're gonna go red, there's no reason we can't go. Probably we'd go yellow to. To not be maroon and have maroon and red. We'd probably go yellow, but probably, maybe yellow jerseys with like maroon pants.
I mean, I think it still works with the ideal perfect combination.
Yes.
The only one that really matters with maroon helmets, maroon jerseys, and gold pants.
Yes.
Which is what everybody wants.
You could do that. I think the gold pants stand out enough that would differentiate because Wisconsin would probably have the white pants.
Yeah, plus that's what everybody wants. Like let's just make that,
Hey PJ, if you're listening, do what we want.
Yeah.
Maroon helmets, maroon jerseys, yellow pants. That's what the people want. Yeah. But I digress. So
Sorry,
no, that's okay. Man, I know Michigan's not going to be quite as good on the D line this year.
Mm-hmm.
But they're going to be very good defensively.
Yeah.
They're going to be very stingy. And I just think that they're going to have a running game that's going to be so tough, especially if Bryce Underwood wins the job.
Yeah.
because he's so athletic. Kind of like we talked about Washington having a
Mm-hmm.
quarterback next to a running back, and they're both a big threat to run the ball.
Mm-hmm.
I think Michigan could have that with Bryce Underwood this year.
Yeah,
And
I
that's going to
agree.
be really dangerous. And I think
Mhm.
Michigan is just the superior team in the trenches.
Yeah.
You know,
The
USC
only,
has not had the time to build up the depth, I think, at this point to go toe to toe in the trenches with a Michigan at this point. Sorry, go ahead.
no, and I just again, you know, if it wasn't for if USC had a quarterback that I felt really confident in,
Yes.
I might pick the upset here, but I don't. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying that Michigan has proven anything to me at this point either, as far as their quarterback goes. But it does, like you said, it comes down to the line of scrimmage, and Michigan is definitely going to be superior when it comes to that. So I think that, you know, I agree. I pick Michigan to win this game. I think USC scores points, but I think Michigan will win.
Right on. All right. So we have Michigan moving on. So then next up we have Indiana versus Iowa. And this one's in Bloomington. Ooh. This is a game, John.
Yeah.
This is a game and a half. I love everything about it. I think Indiana is so good and so efficient offensively, but you know what Phil Parker's really good at doing? He's really good at stopping, and he knows because he had to learn from PJ, because at first he wasn't very good at stopping it.
Mm-hmm.
But after 2 years of RPOs against PJ, Phil Parker figured it out.
Yeah.
And he's really good at stopping RPOs. And Indiana has a really RPO heavy offensive philosophy. Indiana has the better skill players. There's no question about it. I would say quarterback is even, wide receivers far in Indiana's favor, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That said, Iowa's got 3 offensive linemen back. Iowa's always nasty on the defensive line.
Mm-hmm.
And even if they don't have a Cooper DeJean, there's no way they're going to be as leaky in the secondary as they were last year.
I agree. Yeah.
I think this one comes down to turnovers. And I think whichever quarterback makes a mistake, whichever quarterback throws a pick or fumbles a snap or something, that's going to be the team that loses.
Yeah. I agree. But I think, you know, I think this stays close probably through the third quarter. And I don't think it's a blowout, but for me, I have to pick Iowa strictly on the fact that their defense is better. And I think their defensive line is going to harass Indiana and their quarterback all day. And eventually he's probably getting home. And I think I think just by like attrition, Iowa's going to outlast Indiana. And, you know, I think that's the way it's going to go. So I think a close win, but Iowa will win, in my opinion.
Going to break their hearts in Bloomington.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm with you. I have unfortunately, I think the black and yellow, you know, I think they get by. I think we've got our first upset.
Yeah.
Number 5, Iowa over number 4, Indiana. So we've got Iowa moving on. All right. Next up, we have number 3, Illinois hosting number 6, Minnesota. Now, PJ just beat Brett Bielema. The thing is, you might say this is Illinois, right? They're at home and they've got 18 starters back and all that kind of stuff. And Minnesota just beat Illinois. This Illinois team, the one that won 10 games.
Yes.
And they beat them. Was it in, I forget. It was in Champaign, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It was in Champaign. So we got a real humdinger here, folks. Like, this is a really good game. I think we've got good skill players on both sides. I think we've got 2 really good Big Ten defenses. I think you're going blow for blow. I think Minnesota takes a halftime lead. I think it's quiet. The natives get quiet and restless and start talking about basketball season in Champaign. But here's the thing, man. Luke Altmaier is a third-year starter, senior QB.
Mm-hmm.
Drake Lindsay is a first-year starter, redshirt freshman QB. So I think when Minnesota needs a score and they're going down to do it, Drake Lindsay gets baited, takes the cheese, throws a pick. Minnesota falls. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, I think the same thing. I think just based on experience, and how much of that team is coming back this next year at Illinois. This team is going to know exactly how to win another 10 games, and I think it's possible. I think it's just a little bit of lack of experience with Drake Lindsay, and I just don't think Brett Bielema is going to come out not wanting revenge for what happened last year. It was the first time he's ever lost to Minnesota, and I don't think he ever wants to let that happen again. So, and I'm not talking about just at Illinois; I'm talking about at Wisconsin as well. So, he's going to be coming.
You had to say that, didn't you?
Sorry. It's
Why would
reality.
you even say that? We're on a 1-game winning streak, is what we're on against him. We're on a 1-game winning streak.
I lived it too, man. I know.
It's
painful, but
the Brewster years were dark. They were dark.
But I'm with you. I got to give this to Illinois. I think that they're just going to continue on the path that they've been going, and I think in this game, in this situation, they'd be able to beat Minnesota. But I don't think it'll be easy. That's for sure.
No, I think it comes down to turnovers.
Yeah,
I think Drake Lindsay throws a couple picks, and that's the difference. And otherwise, it could be the other way. But Drake Lindsay's a freshman. Luke Altmaier's a senior. I think the senior quarterback is usually going to make better decisions than the redshirt freshman quarterback.
I agree.
Yeah. All right. So we'll go to the left side of the bracket first. We have number 1 seed Penn State hosting number 5 upstart Iowa. So this is one of those things where you get all excited about a big game, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're like Penn State and Iowa. You talk about it all week. And you're like, oh, look at those matchups. Look at those great defenses. Look at Iowa with that quarterback that they finally have, and it looks good that they have a quarterback who can throw more than 5 yards. And everyone's really excited about it. And they've probably got a tight end who's a big threat because Iowa seems to always have a big tight end who's a big threat. And it looks good. And then you realize that Penn State is better than them in every single way. You line up your popcorn and you're sitting there and you're watching warm-ups and you're like, oh, look at the receivers. And then you're like, oh, look at the defensive lines. And then you're like, oh, Drew Aller looks like he's finally figured it out. And then you're like, oh, Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton are both better than anybody Iowa has at running back. And I just think, man, this is one of those games like when Iowa would win the Big Ten West and somehow they were good enough to win the West, but they weren't nearly as competitive against East teams as other West teams were.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow they weren't ever as competitive as like Minnesota and Wisconsin were, or very often. I know 2017 notwithstanding.
Yeah.
When Iowa did beat Ohio State, but like most of the rest of the time, they kind of just get dominated by those teams that were more talented.
Yeah.
So I think this is one of those things you get really, really excited about, and the day comes, and halfway through the first quarter, it's like 17-0, and you're like, oh, well, that was fun.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I really have nothing to add. I agree. I think Penn State, again, it's just there's a talent differentiation, and Penn State's just going to roll. Iowa will, and there was like a weird hatred between those two teams. Like I know that there was some.
I mean, Iowa and Minnesota have beaten Penn State more than anyone else from the Big Ten's middle class.
Yes.
Like they have. And Iowa's there have been some, especially at Kinnick.
Yeah.
There have been some rough trips for Penn State.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, didn't they lose like 17-12 once or something stupid like that?
I think so. Yeah. And it was like there was some questionable calls or things that happened. And I think Iowa fans have never let it go. And, so yeah. But yeah, I think Penn State wins this one for the reasons you pointed out, for sure.
Yeah, I think they win it going away. I just think, yeah.
But plus, this is at Beaver Stadium, and I think this would be a whiteout.
At Beaver Stadium. It's a whiteout. It's a night game. It's the semifinal.
Yeah.
place is shaking. Gronowski, who came from the FCS, has never heard anything so loud in his life.
Yep.
Like,
it's like a freight train, man. Yeah.
Dude, your ears like ring.
Yeah.
It's so loud. If I had to go to a game again there, I would bring earplugs.
Yep.
It's
100%.
that loud, consistent, which is crazy. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But good for them. All right. So we have Penn State moving on to the championship. And on the other side, we have number 3 Illinois versus number 2 Michigan in a rematch of a game Illinois won last year.
Mm-hmm.
I remember all the stuff we said about Illinois having a more experienced QB than Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think. Here's the question: is it Mikey Keene or is it Bryce Underwood? Because if it's Bryce Underwood, man, I'm tending to lean towards the upset because I think they're going to be able to bait him into interceptions because he hasn't seen, a Brett Bielema defense maybe before, and what they can do and how they're gonna manipulate you a little bit and stuff like that. And Illinois tends to go so good on defense. They have all their starters back on defense pretty much. I think all but one.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a tough matchup for Michigan.
Yeah.
Illinois beat them last year. I think that the skill position players are probably a wash, and Michigan would want to have the advantage there. And defensively, Michigan's probably a little better, just because they recruit a little better and they are kind of a machine on defense.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's close. So my thing is, do you trust, is Mikey Keene good enough to beat Illinois? And if not, is Bryce Underwood experienced enough to figure it out and not turn it over 3 times?
Yeah. Look, I like Mikey Keene. I think he's a fun quarterback.
Yeah.
I think he's a good addition. I think he's a smart addition with the experience he has, and he is talented for sure. But I don't know. Underwood is unproven, obviously. Highly touted, but unproven. And you've seen Luke Altmaier go from being like mediocre, and questionable to pretty darn great last year. And I can only assume he's going to be even better this year.
And I mean, and like the folklore around him now, like that, the game-winning bomb against Rutgers.
Yeah.
Some of the comebacks and things. And like, he's got a lot of moxie and a lot of feel in himself. So I don't think going to the big house is going to upset him at all.
No, I don't think so.
Not going to throw him off his game even a little bit.
No, I really don't think so either. I don't think it scares. Michigan doesn't scare Brett Bielema, as we well know.
No.
And I think that, I think it's going to be a really tough, good, close game. But I got to give Illinois the edge on this one. And I'm picking Illinois to upset Michigan.
Yep, I am too. And because I just think if it's Mikey Keene, I think there's a physical talent disadvantage at quarterback.
Yeah.
And if it's Bryce Underwood, there's an experience disadvantage.
Yep.
And either way, I think Illinois finds a way to pull it out in a really close game.
Yep. Agreed.
All right. So we are to our Big Ten championship game, the champion of our 16-team March Madness Big Ten single elimination tournament. We have number 1 Penn State hosting number 3 Illinois. So, John, I think this one is great.
Mm-hmm.
I think this game is really close throughout. I think Luke Altmaier plays out of his mind, maybe just does some things, hits guys when they're covered and just throws them open and just finds ways to move the ball against an amazing Penn State defense. Penn State's so deep, man. They're so talented.
Mm-hmm.
They have so many guys back. And I just think on the line of scrimmage, eventually, Illinois is going to wear down a little bit.
Yeah.
And then when they wear down Katron Allen, Nicholas Singleton, those 1 and 2 and 3 yard runs are going to suddenly be 6 and 7 and 12 yards. and maybe they bust a big one. And I just think, man, I kind of think this is Penn State's year. Honestly, I might have picked Penn State to win even if Ohio State and Oregon were both in this bracket.
Yeah, there's definitely an argument for it, for sure. It would have been really hard to pick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've got Penn State beating Illinois. I think it's, I think kind of last year we saw it. Illinois couldn't really move the ball against Penn State.
Mm-hmm.
Penn State was just too athletic defensively, and they just made it really hard for them and had the home field advantage and all that kind of stuff. And I think it'll be a better game than that was.
Yeah.
I think Altmaier will be a better player than he was even last year.
Mm-hmm.
And he'll be able to make some plays because, he's such a good player. But I just don't believe that Illinois is going to hold up for 4 quarters against this Penn State juggernaut.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I know, like, we talk about how we don't want to only talk about, or give praise to the helmet schools like Penn State. And I wanted to pick Illinois, man. Me
too.
But the fact is, I agree. I think at the line of scrimmage is where this is going to come down to. I actually think right now, I think Altmaier's a better quarterback than Aller. But I just think Aller has far more talent to work with that's surrounding him. And I think that's where it's going to come down to. And absolutely, I think, through 3 quarters, it's just going to wear down Illinois. The
thing is, I don't think Aller has to be better than Altmaier. I just think he has to make fewer mistakes and lean on that run game.
Exactly. And that defense is just going to take care of business, in my opinion.
Yeah, they're so good.
Yeah, I think it'll be close, or it would be a very close game. But yeah, I think Penn State ends up winning it. So
then I guess we have Penn State play the winner of Ohio State, Oregon for conference supremacy. Yeah, that'd be an interesting one, man. I'm telling you, I think I was on another show last week, and or week before or something.
Yep.
And they wanted me to pick a too early national champion, and I took Penn State.
Yep.
And part of it is I didn't want to just pick Ohio State again and be boring. That's part of it, because I do think Ohio State has a very good shot to repeat despite all their losses.
Yep.
But part of it is also, man, Penn State's all in on this year. They're all in from a coaching standpoint. They have the best coaching staff in the Big Ten, arguably. They have the most experienced, most talent staying, and then you look at Oregon, new quarterback, Ohio State, new quarterback, Michigan, new quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I really think if it's not now, then when for Penn State? Like, this is the year they should win the Big Ten. They should make the national title and have a chance to win it.
No, I agree. I think it's now or never. And I think, and isn't it in Penn State's schedule this year? Isn't it also Oregon and Ohio State that they play both of them? Isn't we said with that they have to win at least one of those, right?
They have to win one of those. Yeah. Let me look at their schedule quick.
I think that's the case. I think it's Ohio State and Oregon.
I'm pretty sure you're right. Yeah, let's see. Yep, they start out against Oregon. They also play Ohio State. They don't play Michigan.
Yep.
They don't play Michigan. They do play Indiana, but they don't play Illinois. They don't play Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they don't play Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
So the schedule sets up well for them, man.
Yep.
It does. If they can win one of those games, they can get to the Big Ten title game.
Which I think they absolutely could. I think they could definitely win one of those.
Especially, look, I'm going to especially say they get Oregon to start Big Ten play.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
And not only do they get them to start Big Ten play, but Penn State gets a bye before the game. So they get 3 games to ramp up, and they get 2 weeks to get ready for the Ducks to come to town. I've got that one circled. Yep. If Penn State wins that game, then it's game on for the national title. But if they lose that game, I don't think they're gonna. I think it's Ohio State in the shoe. Let me look. Yeah, it's in the shoe. They're not going to win in the shoe. I just don't believe that ever. I don't ever believe they're going to win in the shoe. So I think if they're gonna they got to beat either Ohio State or Oregon, and it would really behoove them to make it Oregon and get that out of the way. And if they do, man, they could be ranked like number 1 in the country in September.
Well, and I think, we saw how slow Oregon came out last year.
Yes.
And so if that's
now they have a new quarterback.
Case, yeah.
And new skill players and new
Yeah.
defensive players. Yeah.
If that's the case, then I'll pick Penn State to beat Oregon if that seems to be what's going on next year. So, yeah. Well, this was fun. This was cool.
Super fun. John, I thought we were going to go like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
I really did. I was like, oh, this is going to be 45 minutes to an hour. We're going to go really short. But nope, we still went a full 100 minutes. Like it was no big deal.
That was great. I love it. And we're going to continue to try to find some new fun things until obviously spring ball ramps up and we, can provide some more real news because there's just not a ton out there. So that's why we're doing fun stuff like this. And if anybody has any ideas, shoot us a DM on Twitter or email, whatever. Like we love to hear. We'd be happy to entertain whatever anybody wants to throw our way. So
yeah.
I was just thinking when we were talking about it, I was like, maybe we could do like what would the best, color games be in the Big Ten? That's just some silly stuff, but it'd be fun.
Sure.
Just anything, even if it's silly like that. Like we would love to hear what your thoughts are and any suggestions. So yeah. Cool. Well, should I close it out or?
Yeah, close it out. Take us home.
Right. Cool. All right. If you want to find We Live for Saturday, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Podcast Addict. You can find us on Twitter at We Live for B1GSat. You can find Mike at Alibaba26. And you can find me, John, at Norwegian Gopher. And as always, you can email us, We Live for Saturday, B1G@gmail.com.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for rocking with us. If you're still here this far into the podcast in the middle of the off season, you are a real one, and we love and appreciate you. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week in the next one.